Hi everyone and welcome to shadydesigns.com.au. In this video we're going to tell you everything you need to know about adding a trim to your lampshade. There's three different types of lampshades that use trims. The first one is traditional looking lampshades. So lampshades that you might have seen back in the old sort of style, where you just simply have that self trim of fabric at the top and the bottom of the lampshade. Secondly, soft shades, which are tailored shades, lampshades that are literally stitched onto a frame, and they look sort of Victorian in style. And finally, wallpaper lampshades use a trim. There's a few different options out there for trims, but you can have a braid, you could do the self fabric trim like we saw in this example, using the same fabric on the trim at the top and the bottom, or in the case of a wallpaper shade, because wallpapers can't be bonded onto wires at the top and the bottom of the lampshade, we need to use a fabric trim to hold everything together basically. So here's a few examples of trims. Older lampshades or machine-made lampshades usually have a trim at the top and the bottom of the light. This is because machine-made lampshades are kind of quickly done, and to hide that they use a sort of a fabric trim. It's a bit like using a skirting board when you're building a house. It hides those corner cracks and imperfections. There's also roping that you might have seen, and this lampshade here is about at least 20-30 years old. I love soft shades because they just tend to last forever. The same techniques have been used since they were first invented. But in this example, there's a self trim at the top, and then there's a roping along the bottom. So that trim is where we hide the stitching of where we've had to stitch the fabric together. And then this rope just adds a little bit of detail. We can also highlight the lampshade by doing a border style trim. So in this example we've just used a simple fabric, and by using a dark trim it gives the lampshade a bit more of a feature, so it doesn't sort of disappear into sight. In most cases, if you're using a decorative fabric, then you probably will go without a trim because you want the designer fabric to really be the feature. So here's my 5 tips to consider when you're choosing a trim for your lampshade. Firstly, if you're using a decorative or printed lampshade, generally we say go without a trim because you really want that fabric to be the thing that sticks out. By putting a trim on there, it might be a little bit overwhelming. Number 2, if it's a soft shade, you can have your choice of trim, whether you want to do the same fabric as the part that hides where we've done the stitching. You don't have to go with a rope. Or you might want to use a braid. So braids are the more traditional looking pieces which go along the top of any of the eyelets or the rings, the wires. If you've got a plain fabric, then you might want to do a border, whether it's using the same fabric again, or whether you want to create a contrast fabric. So in this case, we've done the dark at the top and the bottom. Sometimes people like to do it just on the bottom. Number 4, if you're unsure if a trim's going to look good or not on your lampshade, on your plain looking lampshade, what we say is, why don't we just make the lampshade and you can go without a trim, and then as you live with it you can start to consider whether you want to put a trim on there or not. The thing is, if we make the trim we can't take it off because there's going to be glue marks and stains, but if you feel like you need to add one, we can always do that at a later stage. So that's a good way to go about it. The important thing with the trims is choosing the fabric. If you choose a very thick fabric, the trim can look very bulky and awkward. And then also on lampshades that are very conical in shape, the trim will start to wrinkle and as it goes around the top of the lampshade. That's why we use braids, because you can use a braid, you can go over a very sort of pitched shape and it won't wrinkle by nature. If you've got any other questions about choosing the right trim, shoot us an email, info@shadydesigns.com.au, or give us a call on 02 8065 4658. We're here to give you the best possible advice any time of the week.